Hey, amazing viewers. I love connecting with all of you from around the world. Stay with me until the end, because this story is packed with surprises that will leave you inspired and thinking differently. Today's twist is something no one saw coming. And if it's your first time here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Show some love by liking the video, and don't forget to share it with your friends. It all started one quiet morning, just like any other. Elijah Johnson, a 10-year-old boy, sat at the kitchen table watching his father, David, prepare for the day. David Johnson, the proud owner of Johnson's Pharmacy, was a man of principle. He believed in his community, in the people he served, and in the power of doing what's right, even when the world tried to bury it under the weight of corruption. On this particular day, however, the world outside his pharmacy was changing rapidly. The small, close-knit neighborhood they called home was under threat, and Elijah could feel it in the air. He could sense the quiet whispers of gentrification slowly creeping into their lives, and with it, the erosion of everything his father had worked for, the legacy of a family pharmacy passed down for generations. It wasn't just the real estate developers or the city officials who made David uneasy. It was the officers, the ones who claimed to serve and protect. They were no longer just a part of the community. They were the enforcers of an unjust system, one that seemed intent on bulldozing through their lives without a second thought. And then it happened. His father, a man who had always stood tall, was taken from them. His death, disguised as a tragedy, masked as an accident, was supposed to be the final blow, the piece of the puzzle that would break their resistance for good. But what the powers that be didn't count on was Elijah. The day his father died, the weight of grief settled heavily on Elijah's young shoulders. He remembered everything. The way the fluorescent lights flickered in the pharmacy that day, the sharp click of his father's pen as he signed the last prescription, the quiet hum of the old refrigerator behind the counter. He remembered his father's steady voice, guiding him, teaching him the values of truth, integrity, and standing up for what's right. As the family made their way to the courthouse for the trial of Officer Michael Reeves, whose actions had left their world shattered, Elijah's mind raced. He could already feel the weight of the room pressing down on him, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let his father's death be swept under the rug. The courthouse bustled with energy as they entered, the air thick with tension. Protesters lined the streets, chanting for justice, while counter-protesters held up blue banners in support of the officer. News vans lined the curb, microphones and cameras aimed at the courthouse steps, and behind it all, Elijah could hear the muffled sounds of a system at war with itself. As he sat quietly beside his mother, Maya, in the back of their old sedan, Elijah noticed her trembling hands as she applied her lipstick. She was scared, terrified, even, but she was doing this for David, for the family, for the entire community that had supported them through it all. "Remember what we practiced," she whispered, looking at him through the rearview mirror. "Just tell the truth." Elijah nodded, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger than all of them was at play. As they stepped out of the car, officers stationed outside gave them cold stares. One even touched his badge in solidarity with Officer Reeves. Inside the courtroom, things were just as tense. The atmosphere was divided, with officers on one side and community members on the other. It was clear, this wasn't just a trial. It was a battle for the truth. Elijah scanned the room, noting every detail, every movement. His father's legacy was on the line, and he couldn't let it slip away. And then, as the trial progressed and Elijah took the stand, something remarkable happened. He wasn't just a child. He was a witness with an unshakable memory, a memory that could expose the truth they were desperately trying to hide. As Elijah faced Officer Reeves across the courtroom, everything shifted. The world outside seemed to fade into a blur, and the only thing that mattered was the truth that Elijah was about to speak. The truth that would shake the very foundations of the system that had failed his father, and a truth that no one could ignore. Little did anyone know, a 10-year-old boy with a perfect recall and unwavering courage was about to become the most dangerous force in that courtroom. The courtroom grew unnervingly still as Elijah took his place at the witness stand. The leather chair he sat in seemed to swallow him whole, his small body dwarfed by its imposing size. The microphone, adjusted for adults, hovered above him like a giant, making his voice seem even smaller than it truly was. But Elijah wasn't worried about being small. He knew that sometimes, in the most unexpected places, the smallest voices carried the loudest truths. Elijah's mother, Maya, sat just behind him, her hands trembling as she clutched the back of the wooden bench. Her face was a mask of calm. But Elijah could see the worry in her eyes, the worry of a mother who had already lost so much. Still, she had prepared him for this moment. "Just tell the truth," she had said, her voice cracking with a mixture of fear and resolve. Elijah took a deep breath and looked out over the courtroom. The room was filled with familiar faces, neighbors who had supported his father, reporters scribbling furiously, and officers in uniforms that barely hid the tension in their eyes. Among them was Officer Michael Reeves, sitting confidently at the defense table with his attorney. Elijah had seen him around town before, but today the officer was not just a face in the crowd. He was the man responsible for the death of his father. As Elijah's gaze met Officer Reeves's, the officer's stiff posture and cold demeanor did nothing to mask the flicker of nervousness in his eyes. Elijah's heart raced. He knew he had a job to do, but it was hard not to feel the weight of everyone's expectations pressing down on him. The prosecutor, District Attorney Sarah Andrews, approached Elijah with measured caution. She was tall, her professional suit pressed neatly, and her face betrayed the faintest trace of doubt. "Elijah," she began, her voice calm but firm. "How old are you?" 10 years and 7 months, Elijah answered, his voice clear, precise. He had practiced the answer 1,000 times at home, but today it felt different. Today, the weight of the truth hung heavily in the air. "And what grade are you in?" "5th grade, at Lincoln Elementary." "But I take advanced math with the 6th grade class," Elijah added, almost proudly. A few whispers rippled through the room. The sharpness of his answers caught everyone off guard. This wasn't the kind of child they had expected, a nervous, unsure boy who would falter under the pressure. No, Elijah wasn't that child. He was a boy with a razor-sharp memory and a quiet, unwavering resolve. "Can you tell us where you were on the day your father was injured?" Andrews asked, carefully choosing her words. Elijah nodded. "I was in the back of the pharmacy, just like I always am when Dad's working. I was sorting the prescriptions. I heard a noise, a loud bang. I ran out to see what it was. Dad was on the floor. Officer Reeves was standing there." Elijah's words flowed with an eerie clarity, as though he was recalling a moment that was burned into his memory, vivid and unshakable. The room fell even quieter, if that was even possible. Elijah wasn't just recounting a tragic event. He was setting the stage for what was to come. He was preparing to expose a truth that no one wanted to hear. "And did you see who fired the shot?" Andrews continued, her voice a little more urgent now. Elijah didn't hesitate. He sat up straighter, his small hand steady as it rose to point directly at Officer Reeves. "He killed my daddy," Elijah said, his voice unwavering. The gasp that rippled through the room was immediate and collective. The air in the courtroom seemed to change, becoming heavier, more charged. Elijah's finger pointed directly at Officer Reeves, his face a mixture of determination and grief. And in that moment, everything shifted. Officer Reeves's confident facade cracked. His mouth went dry, his eyes darting nervously, betraying the fear that had been bubbling under the surface. Elijah's voice, though small, was now the most powerful thing in the room. It was the truth, the one thing no one could deny, no matter how hard they tried. The truth was a force, and Elijah, though only a child, had become its bearer. The courtroom erupted in whispers, gasps, and murmurs of disbelief. But Elijah's gaze never wavered. His finger remained pointed at Reeves, his small body exuding a calm confidence that belied his age. He wasn't just a child anymore. He was the one person who could not be silenced. His mother, Maya, sat in the back, tears streaming down her face. She had prepared him for this moment, but even she didn't realize just how powerful her son's courage would be. Elijah wasn't just a witness. He was the spark that would ignite the fire of justice. And that fire, it would not be easily extinguished. The unstoppable power of truth. The courtroom was in chaos. The gavel crashed down again and again as the judge desperately tried to restore order. But there was no stopping the wave Elijah had unleashed. His voice, his unwavering finger pointed at Officer Reeves, had shattered the silence that once filled the room. His words hung in the air, lingering like a challenge to everyone present. "He killed my daddy." Elijah's small body trembled, but his resolve only grew stronger. His heart beat louder than ever before, not in fear, but in the certainty of what he had just done. He had spoken the truth. It was undeniable. And in that courtroom, the truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. As the chaos raged around him, Elijah's eyes never left Officer Reeves. He could see the fear in the officer's face, the fear of being exposed for the lies and corruption he had woven into the very fabric of his career. But Elijah was not just a child. He was the embodiment of justice, a reminder that no matter how powerful someone might seem, the truth will always find its way to the surface. The courtroom eventually quieted, but the weight of what had just transpired was impossible to ignore. Elijah had done what no one expected. He had become the voice of reason, the spark that ignited a movement. He had shown the world that no matter how big the system, no matter how entrenched the corruption, the truth always finds a way to break through. And when the truth speaks, it cannot be silenced. Elijah's mother, Maya, watched as her son sat still, his finger still pointing at Officer Reeves, his gaze unwavering. Tears streamed down her face, but these were not tears of grief. They were tears of pride, of awe. She had always known that Elijah was different, that he had something extraordinary inside him. But today, she had witnessed her son's bravery become a beacon of hope for the entire community. The trial, like so many other trials, was meant to be a foregone conclusion, a way to sweep the truth under the rug and continue business as usual. But Elijah had changed all that. He had disrupted the cycle, forcing everyone to confront what they had been ignoring for far too long. What happened next wasn't just about a child's courage. It was about the community that rallied behind him, about the voices that had been silenced for too long finally being heard. It was about people standing together, refusing to let fear and power keep them quiet. Elijah had sparked a fire, but it was up to the rest of them to keep it burning. And so they did. The trial became more than just a legal battle. It became a movement. The community rallied behind Elijah, lifting his family up with unwavering support. They were fighting not just for justice for David Johnson, but for justice for everyone who had been pushed aside, for everyone who had been forgotten by a system that didn't care. As the trial drew to a close, and the gavel came down in favor of justice, Elijah stood up. He wasn't just a boy anymore. He was a symbol of resilience, of truth, and of the unshakable power of standing up for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you. In a world that often tries to silence the truth, it is the smallest voices that can have the loudest echoes. Elijah Johnson's courage reminded us all that no matter how powerful the forces against us may seem, we all have the ability to create change. And sometimes, it only takes one person, a child, a voice, a truth, to bring down an empire. So remember, when life tries to bury your truth, stand tall. Your voice matters.